confidential. In fact, anyway, were we? So just reaffirming that we are or will be
live streaming,
live and recorded.
Yes. So morena koutou. This follows from a session we've had already, but just to acknowledge that we are live streaming this morning. That is now our approach. So just a reminder that this morning's session is being live streamed, and I believe we've got 2 staff online, so that's good. So welcome.
And that's a welcome from me as well. I didn't get a chance to get that out.
Apologies.
So who's leading this off?
Yeah, so this morning we have Kendall and Aidan. They are from our policy team. They'll be leading this morning's discussion. They will have frequent flyer miles in this chamber as we start the LTP process. They will be a frequent, and the rest of the policy team will be frequent presenters along with the finance team as we work through the process. Today is simply just a start to let you know the process that we follow with the LTP, or the long-term plan. So it's setting the scene before we get involved in the what will be an extensive period of work to come. But I won't spoil the surprise. I'll hand it over to Aidan and Kendall.
Kia ora, good morning. So yeah, kicking off the LTP. It seems like it's just been a blink of the eye since we were doing the last LTP. So this morning, please feel free to ask questions as we go. The LTP is a complex process, and there is more complexity getting added to that as we work through the reform period at the moment that's coming out of central government. So there are no silly questions. We might not have the answers, but we will get them to you if we don't. So yeah, just please ask questions as we go through this. Today we're going to be introducing the LTP process. We're going to be outlining the key steps for you, and more importantly, when and how you will all be involved in this. Our agenda today is we're going to start with just a little bit of understanding about some different plans we have here at Council, the corporate planning cycle, navigating the long-term plan. As we said, it is complex. We're going to cover off some quite particular important context for this LTP. As I said, we are going through a number of reforms at the moment, so we just want to cover off that. What your opportunities are for this LTP. So we have been listening to a few of your other discussions through annual plans, and we know that there's been a lot of deferring to the LTP to have opportunities to what you can change through those processes. So we wanted to cover off those today. We will be talking about timelines. It's the next 17 months, so it's quite long, and also just what's coming up over the next couple of months for you. So what we wanted to do here is just quickly explain the difference between 2 of our key documents, the long-term plan and the district plan. And we've picked the district plan because we do know that there can be some confusion about these 2 particular ones. So our district plan, which you would have heard some stuff about it already, that is our document that manages land use and subdivision. It identifies different zones, so our residential zones, our rural zones, lifestyle zones. It sets out parameters for what you can and can't do on your property in terms of how big you can build your house or how high you can build a building. And it manages activities that can operate on your property as well, so businesses and the likes. Where you exceed the rules that are set out in the district plan, that's when you would go through what we call a resource consent process. The long-term plan, which we're discussing today, is our accountability document to the community. We set out what we're going to be delivering, how it's going to be funded, what are the focus areas, and this is where the complexity comes in with the long-term plan as well, is there is a number of other plans and strategies and policies that build up the long-term plan. So within the long-term plan process, there's the financial strategy, we have an infrastructure strategy, we have rating and funding by plans and policies. So there is a lot within it, and so there will be a lot of things thrown at you. So we just wanted to try and set the scene that the district plan manages our land, within the district, and the long-term plan is the budget. So the long-term planning cycle. Every 3 years we develop a long-term plan, and within that there are the annual plans. One that you're currently working through now is the example there. Sorry, I just looked at my notes. So the long-term plan, it sets out our focus areas, investment, and the services and services levels that we deliver to the communities. It's also our budgeting tool. So it sets out what we're going to be investing in, and it also sets out how we're going to fund that. And as I said before, this is your chance to review and adjust anything within that LTP that you're currently working through. With the annual plan, you've indicated that there are some things that you would like to. So just reiterating that this is the chance, the LTP is that chance to start looking at all those different things. Introducing the water services strategy. It's new. What it is essentially the water services strategy is your long-term plan for council's waters. Last year we went through the local waters done well reform, and through that council decided to keep their water services in-house. As part of that, we need to separate waters from non-waters activities, and to do that we will have a long-term plan and a water services strategy. So the long-term plan, that will include things, your parks and reserves activities, your facilities, venues, waste management and transport, and I've probably missed a few others off there. Yes?
Can I just ask, sorry to interrupt you, Kendall, the funding for the separation of the water services, has central government, they've imposed this upon us essentially, do they provide any funding, or is this... No, thank you.
I'm sorry if my smile gave that away. So as I was saying, two separate documents, but we will develop them on the same principles. So we will develop them in parallel with one another. There is one point of difference, which is the Water Services Committee that is currently being set up. That will have a particular oversight role of the Water Services Strategy, taking into consideration the new regulatory requirements coming through the Commerce Commission there. So that particular committee will have a role in that development, but primarily both the LTP and the Water Services Strategy will be developed by yourselves. The other key thing with the Water Services Strategy is there will be a conversation at some point through the process about reviewing Council's decision previously about keeping the waters in-house, or deciding whether you would want to move to an organisation such as Waikato Waters. Did you have anything to add? No? Cool. So what we thought we would do, to just try and keep this a little bit high level and interesting, is we've got a diagram which is setting out the process of how we're going to navigate this LTP for the next 17 months. So I will just, hopefully, this will work. Did it work? Oh. Oh no. How do I make it work? Oh. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Molly. There we go. Perfect. So just before we get it started, sorry Aidan, this will be made available to you in Diligent so that you can reference back to it as much as you like. We've also prepared what we're calling a guidebook, and that guidebook has a little description about each of these steps as well for you. That also has a number of web links at the back of it, so for example to the Commerce Commission, to legislation that we'll be using, the Local Government Act, the Local Government Water Services Act, so that will all be made available to you there. So yeah, you can start now.
Okay, so this diagram and the little guidebook that goes with it will kind of be your Bible for the LTP, and we hope you'll keep it with you. It'll remind you what stage you are in the process every time we come to you with a particular issue. There's a lot of plans and policies and strategies that all come under the LTP, as Kendall said. It also covers every activity and service that Council provides, and there's some 22 to 40 of those, depending on how you count them. Huge amount of services, everything from cemeteries to public toilets to regulatory services to emergency management. Everything that Council does we'll be needing to review and set the budgets for, make sure we know what services and service levels we'll be providing for the community, how we're going to fund that. So there's a huge breadth of material to go through. This is structured in kind of 3 stages. That's how we like to think of it. The first is kind of a scoping stage, and that's really important for you. That's where you get to set some high-level direction of what are the key issues or areas that you're interested in being reviewed, where you want to see some options and advice on what our choices are in those spaces. And we need that quite early so that it can then be informed by the planning. So the next stages are the planning, and for part of that we'll be going away, and each team will be looking at their plans and their budgets and their challenges, plus your direction and how they're going to make it all work with the limited money we've got, particularly in a rates cap environment. And then we'll come back to you at the end with this is what it all adds up like. You'll be weighing through everything, trying to make decisions, and then presenting that to the community and getting community feedback. So sort of staging, scoping and setting the direction, and then the planning, and then the coming back and decision making and consulting. So the scoping stage is the key one I want to talk to. It's kind of highlighted in green there. The first cab coming off the rank, and it's coming quick. It's later this week. I think you have a workshop on it. Is the growth assumptions. We need to do that quite quick because we need that for planning. Obviously, anytime there's a new house built in Taupō or a big subdivision of 20 or 30 lots, 50 lots, I don't know how big they do them, we need to make sure that our network infrastructure is going to able to service those houses. When they build the house, they want to make sure that there's water coming into them. They want to make sure when they flush, the water goes away again. And we also want to make sure that the traffic is managed, right? So we need to be planning ahead in advance, making sure that we have the adequate capacity, particularly in our network infrastructure, ahead of time to enable that growth. So making sure that all our planning is on the same reasonable basis and we understand what areas we're planning for growth and what speed we can expect is a critical starting point to support our asset managers in particular. So growth assumptions is one of the first ones off the first cabs off the rank. That'll be coming soon. Followed shortly by some key infrastructure objectives. And again, that's for our big network infrastructure. What are the main things that you want to make sure when we're planning for, we're achieving? At the moment, they're reasonably basic things, like we're making sure that our infrastructure is kept in good condition, we're maintaining and renewing it and managing it well, both for current and future generations, that we are indeed planning ahead for growth, that we're planning for regulatory requirements, particularly drinking water standards and environmental controls, and also that we're thinking about resilience of our infrastructure. So those sorts of high-level direction we want to lock in, so that when our asset managers go away and plan, they can present back to you on how they are meeting those objectives, where investment is needed, where there might be shortfalls, what some of the challenges are. Also in that green space, one of the big ones is looking at key issues and areas for review. The LTP will obviously look at every service that Council provides, but we don't have the resources to do a deep dive into every single service that Council provides. We'll be asking you to hopefully identify just a handful of them where you want a deep level review of what are our choices around this. And in a rates cap environment, there's probably going to be what are our choices for maybe doing a bit less, or changing up the way we do things to maybe save money. So because we can't do everything, we need to be quite strategic, we need to be targeted, and we need to be going through those quite carefully. So we'll have some robust discussions there. We'll try and give you some good base information around what we currently do, what some of the challenges we face, hopefully around what the activities currently cost to provide, so that you can provide some direction on, hey, we'd really like to have a look at maybe operation hours for this, or do we still need to do this? Is this still a well-utilised asset? What are our choices here? Any questions on that before I move on?
So is this information available to the public currently?
Which information? These diagrams?
Correct, in the handbook you were telling us about.
Yes, we can make them available to public, probably after we make them available to you. We're still finalising them, but I think they'll be ready in the next couple of days. And they're open information about how the process will work and some of the key stages. So I think they could be made public, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, back to water
Yeah,
services.
I've got a question.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
Wahine, you go.
Oh no, I was just going to ask about the engagement plans on the end. What's the thinking behind the different stages of early engagement in comparison to iwi and hapu engagement?
Hi. So yeah, there will be a slight difference. The teams, so our engagement teams, both the iwi co-governance team and the community engagement team, are just currently working through preparing the engagement plans. We will be bringing them to you at some point through the process to look at before we start either the early engagement and the formal consultation process later in 2027. So yeah, there will be a slight difference to how we are to make sure that, one, we're meeting our requirements, both from from the Local Government Act perspective, but also our partnership agreements as well. So we're making sure that we're getting all of the right things in place and talking to who we need to be talking to.
Kylie.
Just in relation to the water services, so we've got a long-term plan which is going to affect the annual plan. We're looking at a rates cap, and we're looking at about $1 million spend is about 1% of rates. Where does this water services fit in regards to rates caps? So look, I'm just looking at the Fonterra example and how much it has cost to debundle consumer as part of their divestment process, and I'm completely aware of what those figures are, and I'd just like some guidance as to how much we actually think it's going to cost us to debundle, let alone the forward-looking costs, because it's a massive thing to debundle the entire thing out of what's been a council business and part of council day to day. So I'm just really interested at high level. Are we looking at 1% of rates? Are we looking at 2% of rates? And then does that mean that, I guess my supplementary question is then with a rates cap, how much are we actually going to be looking at? We might only be able, like, how many services are we going to have to cut? Sorry, I don't know how to put that quite into words, but I'm just quite concerned.
Oh, there's a fair bit there. The first point is the rates cap is separated for waters and non-waters. So the rates cap that the government has identified for us excludes water's targeted rates or water charges. So that part of the business essentially does not have a rates cap at the moment, and not the 4% set out by government, 2 to 4%. And that's because I think they acknowledge there's a huge amount of work to be done in that space. There's a huge amount of investment required to meet new regulatory standards. There's regulators coming on board, imposing new requirements. There's new economic regulators, and we don't understand what that all means yet. Different entities are going through different stages of separation. So some of that we have accounted for, and we're planning for the early stages through the annual plan. And I think you'll see a bit of separation in the rates required for our water side of the business versus the rest of the business, and it will be higher because we're having to do a lot more work in that space. And then through the long-term plan and the water service strategy, they will each be looking at the rates requirement for each side of the business, so to speak. So it might be that we work within a rates cap for our non-water side of the business, and the other side of the business we might have limited choice. There might be a whole bunch of work we have to do because it's imposed on us by government and to meet the regulatory standards. and the cost of that might be a lot higher than the rates cap. So that might be something that the public doesn't realise about the rates capping mechanism and the pressures on us for waters, and something we might need to communicate.
And then the debundling expenses, will they, because the water services separation hasn't occurred, so is that, where will that, sorry Sarah, but I'm just trying to work out, the community's going to say you've spent X amount, and some of this is a choice factor and some of this is not a choice factor, and if we're debundling and the expense of that, how do we account for that, and where does that sit within the scheme of all of this and the separate services? Sorry, I didn't mean to, but I just would really like to clarify that at this point.
Yeah, so you're right. Through the chair, we had allowed for some of that, particularly in the technological space. So a lot of our costs that are external, other than the regulatory component required now, because of course regulated industries pay for themselves. So there's obviously a large increase, given we've got a few $100,000 of regulatory fees to pay each year now. But we also, from a technological perspective, we've priced separation within our budgeting system, separation within our ERP, our Enterprise Resource Planning System, and the team have been working through that. The majority of the costs, to be honest, is internal, and I've talked about this quite a lot. It's a shift in focus, particularly for finance, for the policy teams, for Joe and the PMO team. So it's about trying to manage that process in internal and shift our priorities. So a lot of internal staff resources to get there, and I've talked about particularly the finance and digital team being very busy, given we've got to shift priorities to do this work. But from a financial perspective for that software side, we're probably looking at $200,000 or $300,000 a year difference for extra licenses and stuff.
So, but that cost of reallocating resource, you said, is internal, so that's going to be kept against, if we say, the council business versus the water services business, so it's not going to be a clear delineation of the actual cost, is it?
Yeah, no, we're still working through all those policies as to how we share costs and split costs throughout the activities. And again, given we've the Commerce Commission are kind of just coming up to speed now because they've had to resource for all of this work, there's still a little bit of information missing. So we are doing the best we can to look at some of the fundamental principles behind that separation, because as you say, if staff times reprioritised to this water service splitting, then absolutely the water service activity needs to be, essentially funding that. So yeah, that's, again, there's a lot of work for the team to do in just that, trying to figure out what costs sit where, because we've got essentially two completely separate, distinct activities, and by legislation now we have to completely separate them. So, how we assign things like the building lease, how we assign things like, our support services. A lot of stuff to work through, and that's why Jeanette and the team are going to be very busy over the next year to work through all of those, and then get the green light from Commerce Commission that we've done things right, or given direction on where we might need to improve things. So yeah, I imagine it's a very full couple of years of work internally, but yeah, from an actual external cost perspective, the regulatory impact, and then software licensing to split off those entities.
So we're already probably looking at 1%, just adding up those numbers loosely in my head.
I think we, in the last, I can't remember what it was, the LTP, we forecast we're putting it about 800,000, and that's only gone up.
Through the chair, can I just clarify for anyone listening, and I'm sure Aidan understands, but there is no government obligation to apply cap on rates until 2029, irrespective of any bundling or debundling of water services. So, I mean, that's a fact, and if there is going to be any cap on rates, it will be a cap on rates applied voluntarily by the elected members at this table. Yeah.
I'd just like to clarify that's got nothing to do with the questions I was asking.
Oh no, through the chair, it was just it was just the way perhaps it was being answered, that it implied that the sort of was an obligation to cap rates, but there is nothing in place until 2029. That's all I was clarifying.
Nevertheless, Duncan, I think many around this table would like to see us head in that direction of reducing costs. Certainly all the ratepayers do. Sorry, please carry on.
One of the other questions was about early engagement, both with iwi and the wider community. And again, that's one of the reasons we think that scoping stage is so important. There might be big issues or big changes that council might have to consider, and you might want to think about to what degree do you want the community's input into those earlier rather than later, to inform optioneering or to get a sense of what may or may not be acceptable, or to simply give the public potentially time to adjust to changes that might be coming. So through scoping, we'll look to have some of those conversations too. Are there conversations you'd like to have with the community about any of these ideas? And again, hopefully that early engagement will be sort of strategic and genuine. What ability do they have to actually inform or impress upon changes, or is this more understanding the pressures we're under and what is likely to be coming and what can they actually shape? And the same goes with iwi too. Particular, we've have agreements with them under the Manawhako Honua Rohe down in Turangi, where the LTP, in particular the infrastructure strategy, and I'm sure that now applies to the water services strategy, are identified as key documents of interest to them, and we've got an agreement to work with them early on that. So identifying key issues and areas and objectives early and having conversations with them early is part of our plan for that. The only other green box there in the early scoping stage is probably project ideas. This is a lot smaller, and obviously in a rates capping environment this is a bit more challenging. Sort of improving services and new investment kind of is a opposing force to a rates cap. It's hard to do both together and will be quite limited in scope. But you might have questions around your local playground is getting quite old and tatty. What is its plan for renewal? Is the plan to renew it? Again, in the scoping stage.
Can I just go back to what you were saying before?
Okay.
Put my light on, but obviously didn't see. You said you've got plans to do some consultation early in terms of the Manawhako Hono agreement. So are there specific plans in place to do the same with Tū Whare Toa? So that is just Ngāti Turangi Tukua. So what happens with Tū Whare Toa?
No, thank you. Through the chair. Like I said earlier, the engagement plans, so David and his team in particular are having a focus on what iwi and hapu engagement looks like for this LTP, and through that it will identify the stakeholders, how we're having conversations, for example, with Tū Whare Toa Māori Trust Board, with Ngāti Turangi Tukua, Ngāti Whawa, or the iwi authorities, and also how we bring that down a level to hapu as well. So using, I believe at the moment we've been doing some collective huis, and so working out how that's going to work in this LTP space as well. So the teams are just working through that and putting their thoughts and ideas down into their engagement plans. And yeah, we're trying to get them done as quickly as possible, because we do know, we've been listening to our communities. We know that they're ready to talk about a lot of things, and so we just want to make sure that these engagement plans are setting the scene for how those conversations and who those conversations are going to happen with. They will, like I said, they will come back to you to make sure that you guys have a different lens to us as well. So making sure that collectively we've got the right idea and capturing what we need to do.
So the engagement plans, we expect to see those relatively soon, because I'm looking at your roadmappy thing here. Yes. I would expect to have those soon.
In the near future, yes. Like
Before
I said,
we go any further with anything else?
we won't be going and engaging until you've seen those, yes.
And Councillor Foreman, if I can just jump in there, yes, we will be engaging with Tū Whare Toa in the same way. It's not mandated by the same legal agreements, but that's how we work.
Bye.
Sandra.
Yes, Aidan, you talked about project ideas, but my understanding from doing the previous plans that we have a bow wave, and there are things in that bow wave that we would be looking at as some sort of priority, or does everything just go back into the mix again?
No, there will be a process obviously for prioritisation, and this is where this sort of top-down direction and bottom-up direction all coming together through the LTP. So this is your opportunity to identify the things that you've heard from the community that you think are issues and important, that you'd like to understand what our plan is for that asset or for the service. That's what we're trying to get in the scoping early to inform the planning. Each team will obviously, they'll have their own list of projects that they understand that the community wants or have come up before or they think they need to do, and these will all come together, and then you'll prioritise.
But my question was specifically about the bow wave. So what about those things that were in the bow wave that we had shelved previously?
So the bow wave will come back into the mix and be
So it just all goes back in with
reprioritised.
everything else?
I believe so. And
Okay.
as certainly in a rates cap environment, we won't be in the financial position to continue with the historic plan we had in our previous LTP. We will be recalibrating and reassessing our new plan going forward based upon our new financial strategy, other pressures we're facing. So
So the
they'll be
answer's
up for
no.
debate, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on the green sort of scoping side of things? Okay.
Oh, you okay? Have you got any further questions? Carry on. Thank you very much.
Oh, through the chair, are you going to show us the growth assumptions, or are we just talking about it? I mean, was that the next slide or something?
Oh, no,
Was it?
that's on Thursday.
Oh,
Yes, you've got a whole workshop about growth projections. It's going to be exciting.
So all of these is just to give you an understanding at this point of the scope of the decisions you have to make. We'll be coming back to you with each of those with much more detail, obviously, on what it is and what you need to decide at the time.
So we just wanted to touch quickly on the planning side of things. So we have asset management plans, and those cover the key, I suppose, asset areas, your waters, parks and reserves, property, what am I missing? Solid waste, and transport. Those helps the team work through what their asset plans, what they need to be investing in, how they're going to meet growth requirements, and essentially what it delivers is a work program for then you guys to work through later on in the process. The equivalent to that is the rest of the organisation will be doing activity area plans, and so they will also be working through a similar process to enable you to work through those work programs, understand what the key things that we're looking at is, what is legislatively required, the bow wave, Sandra, for example, what projects are already underway in that space, the maintenance and renewals. Those will be some of the key focuses of people's planning. Given that rates cap environment and working within a box almost, there isn't really the ability to start doing lots of glamorous things, although I would say we don't do too many things. But yeah, it is a very back to basics kind of focus in terms of what the teams will be giving the guidance to do with that planning. And so that planning is the first stepping stone to coming back to you all and working through the plans and having those conversations about essentially what's in and what's out, and then we go and speak to the community to see have we got it right. That's the consultation phase next April. So, yeah. Anything else?
Also in those purple boxes I suppose the LTP as a whole, it sets out your investment plans, your service delivery plans, the service levels you'll be providing for the community. It's also your budgeting tool, where you set the budget for all those activities and prioritise your investment. The flip side of that is all those costs must be funded. Council has a bunch of rating and funding policies, including its fees and charges schedule and its development contributions policy, and they all need to be reviewed in parallel with the LTP to balance the equation. So what will it cost, but also how will the community have to pay for that? So again, we'll go through the same sort of process. We'll try and set out the status quo and some of the challenges we're facing and get some early direction on what are the areas for review in that space. Our fees and charges obviously are things like What does it cost to go to the pool or to take a load to the tip? Or what does it cost to get a building resource consent? Our development contributions policy is another major one. It's always updated with the LTP. We talked about growth earlier and how we have to make sure that we have capacity to allow for new houses to be built. Putting in that capacity comes at a cost, and we try and allocate that back to that growth community so that when you build the new house and develop the new section, currently in our greenfield areas you pay a charge of about $30,000 or $40,000, and that goes to make sure that we can put in the capacity infrastructure required to allow you to build that house. So it's quite a big thing reviewing that. That will flow out of our investment plans and what our growth needs are and our growth model. But that is a big section to review. And then obviously we have rating policies and funding policies. How do we choose to fund a particular activity? Is it through rates? Is it through fees and charges? In a rates cap environment, we'll be needing to review those to make sure that we can balance for the services that the community requests. And we also have rating policies around who pays what level of rates, how do we charge them, how are they applied, who can get remissions. There's quite a lot in that space too. So we'll come back to you again early with an overview on those and get some scoping on direction for what would you like us to review as we do our financial planning for that side of the business. Okay.
Any questions? Sandra?
Aidan, is there any indication at present to you, the staff, as to how the various bills that are going to go through Parliament are going to affect us? Is it going to make your load lighter? No, no. Okay, right. So, I mean, I was heading down the path of, if things are lighter and easier to get through, then the costs are going to be less, and hopefully there will be some relief for ratepayers. But no, that's not looking okay. Right. I'll let you answer.
Look, thanks for raising that. There are a couple of things I did want to touch on that I didn't. The first is, there's a lot being thrown at us, and that's why we need to be quite strategic and highlight the areas that we want to review. We can't review everything. You will get a lot of information for issues that we need to respond to and sort of the bottom-up challenges that we face. And it's very easy to be sucked into that and then not have had your chance to provide your direction yourself. So we do want to do that scoping. Rest assured you will get a lot of pressures coming from us from the bottom as we go through our planning stage. No, Council's going through a lot of reforms and changes, all of which are challenging to manage at the moment. The one I did want to touch on is the DC policy changes. The government's moving to DC levies, but that will not matter for this LTP. We'll have development contributions for this LTP. The new arrangement won't come in until 2028 or 2030, the next LTP. So it's business as usual for development contributions.
If I could perhaps just jump in there, Aidan, just in regards to your question, Councillor Greenslade, because I think the LTP is a huge piece of work in itself, so it's normally sort of an 18-month process. My view with these reforms is this is going to be a ride. We've set up a project team Joe's been leading to try and match all the work we need to do around the reforms so that we're trying our best to be as efficient as possible to work through all these changes. But my example, and I might have it slightly wrong, my example in 2027 is we'll be responding to emergency management changes, trying to invest in that. We'll be trying to separate out waters from the rest of the organisation, move to a regulated environment. We'll be developing a spatial plan potentially as required by the RMA changes. Mr Mayor may actually be sitting on 4 regional councils, and we'll be thinking about the future of local government and what that looks like in a simplifying sense, and trying to fund it all in a rates capped environment through this LTP. So fun times ahead might be the tagline for this LTP. I think every council is grappling how to stage, how to approach, and how to, as efficiently as possible, step through those possible changes, or some of them are looking more likely. But we have a lot of work ahead, and a lot of changes to try our best to work through with this LTP, to bring you all on the journey, the staff on the journey, and of course the community on the journey too.
Duncan.
Yeah, through the chair. Just something. I just thought of something now. Really, I bet good money on it that until 2029, there's a bunch of councils out there are going to try and sneak in a bunch of stuff and get it built before the cap comes down. I think that goes without question. I hope this council isn't going to be one of them. But I had another question, flipping heck, I've forgotten the actual original. Oh no, here it is. It's a good question. Regional councils being demolished, I'm interested. Okay, provided that happens, that this council takes over the responsibilities of the regional council, does that mean we get the regional, their funding, the regional rates? It's about $500 a year or each ratepayer. Are we going to get that money to be able to do that stuff?
I think we're getting a little ahead of where the direction is at the moment. So my understanding, which might be a bit high level, is that the idea is to remove the governance group for the council, not necessarily the organisation itself. The mayor will be part of a team that does the governance for the organisation, and the mayor and his team will be looking forward of how do we simplify the process going forward. So until those plans are known and they're all worked through, and I think there's a bit of a time frame for that, we won't know what the future holds.
Okay.
In terms
I
of
didn't.
the
Yeah,
balance
okay.
between
Oh,
us and-
thought I'd ask anyway.
But Aidan, my understanding is that the regional councils will not exist, but they will be governed by the various mayors in the district. So there will still be, if you like, a regional council, but sitting around the table will be the mayors as opposed to regional councillors.
That's right. So the organisation will still exist, and the governing body will be looking forward. What are the simplification options? And there's a time frame for that, but the outcomes aren't known yet.
Thank you.
Not on. There we go. So the orange part there, that is probably the third quarter of this year. That's where we're going to be coming back to you with plans after all the planning has been done by staff to start working through what's in, what's out, and getting it ready for the community conversation earlier. There just to highlight that there is a lot of work that needs to be prepared before it does go out to the community. So we basically from November this year, we will be preparing documents because that will also need to be audited before it goes out to the community. So there are quite a few processes that take place before we can have the conversation, and that will be quite a time-consuming one. And it's also just that, I suppose, for us as staff, making sure that there isn't silence while that's going on, so that the community know that there's still some work going on and that we will be coming to talk to them. But yes, the audit process, there is two audit processes. One is they audit our consultation document, and that generally happens over February in 2027 it will happen. And then again, they audit the plan before you adopt it before June in 2027. So that is the end part of the process. I think it's fair to say that the first 3 quarters of this are going to be very busy for everyone. And as Julie just pointed out, we'll be navigating quite a lot of change coming from central government and trying to understand how that needs to be implemented into our processes. So it might be a few 2 steps forward, 1 step back as we go along the way. I suppose the example we can give, recent example, was the Local Waters Done Well reform. And that started with the Labour government on one track. The elections happened, National came in and changed what they wanted to do there. That for, let's say 6 months of that previous LTP process created a lot of uncertainty in how we were developing our plans. Where water's in, where water's out, and trying to get ahead of how we delivered that information to councillors to have those conversations. We were fortunate that the government saw that was putting a lot of stress on our timeframes, and they did give us an extension, and that's why the 2024 LTP was adopted in September, which is much later than the standard June timeframe. given the level of reform that we are going through, that may come up as well, that there may be extensions, but I'm not holding my breath. So we will be trying to get through all of this as best as we can. And I would just say that, yes, some of the information we do bring to you, we want to make sure that there is visibility, maybe at a high level, because we don't have all of the information at hand, but we will do our best to make sure that you can understand it as well as we can. So that's just probably the biggest takeaway for the next 17 months, that we're going to be operating in a very big whirlwind. Is there any questions?
Are there any questions on that?
So I think we've now covered most of this. The key point was to give you a sense today of the scope of the LTP, that it covers a review of all council services, that it also covers a review of how we fund and pay for those services, and that can include things like proceeds from sale. We've got land development activities that we do. In a rates cap environment, we might be thinking about whether or not we can continue to maintain and provide particular services or assets, and whether or not we want to reinvest that money. There's also Council's TEL fund, which might become a factor. That was when Council sold interests in an electricity company down in 1995, and there's currently about a $77 million fund, and maybe the interest or returns from that, we might consider how we want to use that, or the community might choose to use that instead of cutting services. So the whole service level trade-offs as well as the funding options fall within the scope of the LTP. So this is your opportunity to have those conversations. In particular, if there are big changes you'd like, we'll try and pick them up through the scoping stage so that they have time to feed into optioneering, analysis and planning. If you throw big ideas at us late on in the process, it'll be challenging to implement them in the first 3 years of the plan. So that's probably the key message there.
Kylie.
Can we just, I'm just looking at that with some ambiguity. So services is things that we provide, and then we've got funding and investment for each activity. This is where we set the direction for projects as well, isn't it, within the district? I just think that might be a little ambiguous to members of the public that are listening, and perhaps for people that haven't been through this process before.
Absolutely, you're correct. So it's both the budgets for all the services that we offer, libraries, parks, pools, and how much we can invest in providing different service levels, mowing the grass, upgrading playgrounds, maintaining playgrounds, operating hours, whether we're renewing our book supply, everything in terms of level of service for those facilities and services, but also investment program. But again, within a rates cap environment, there'll be investment required for growth. There'll be investment required to meet regulatory and sort of safety concerns. And
I guess I'm just really wanting to clarify, this is somewhere like the bridge project would come in for a second bridge, and if we wanted roundabouts in certain communities, if we saw needs for widening of roads and other projects like that, that this is where we need to bring these things up, is at this point.
Yep. Council's forward investment program will be determined through this. But again, I just want to reiterate, through a rates cap environment, levels of service improvements like that will be, they go counterintuitive with a rates cap. There'll be a limited scope for those. And that'll be something we have to weigh up.
Duncan.
You just through the chair, just to clarify the obvious to some, but not everyone actually who's listening in. I mean, the big idea of reducing staff, which could have a large impact on rates, is something, that's what you're talking about, would need to be flagged early to be able to, be achieved and make a difference.
So I think that's the levels of service conversation, because staff are just one of the inputs into the cake mix in terms of achieving a level of service. And so, yes, you have lots of time coming up to discuss levels of service, which is probably the right place for you to raise what you would like to deliver to the community, and therefore we can then go away and think about what resourcing we need, staff being one of those inputs to delivering the output for the community.
Yeah, I suppose I'll just put my 2 cents in, is that level of service doesn't necessarily degrade with reducing staff, and it doesn't have to. That's sometimes presumed, but anyway.
I think we'd all be keen to hear, Duncan, how we would reduce staff levels and still maintain the levels of service. Not saying it can't be done, but could be a challenge.
Right, well, we've kind of covered this off already, but it's a good summary. So, context for this long-term plan and water services strategy, although just to keep things simple, we will probably just be referring to it as the long-term plan, and then talking when we need to specifically about the water services strategy. It's the long-term plan is a very familiar phrase, so please forgive me if we cause some confusion. As I said, the Systems Improvement Bill came out last year, and that looked at revising the purpose of local government. So it took away it's proposing to take away the focus of the wellbeings, social, economic, environmental and cultural, and replacing that with a focus on good quality, cost-effective infrastructure. This, I suppose then the announcement of rates caps came along and has reinforced that purpose statement as well, indicating that the proposed rates cap range will be 2 to 4% is what's currently proposed. The 2% being ensuring that we maintain minimum asset and levels of service, and 4 being the top cap. Sorry, I've just lost myself there. So looking at that 2 to 4% range, we are going to need to be careful about how and what we plan to achieve within that. A piece of direction that we would love to have early on and is around whether we do transition into the rates cap in 2029 or whether you want to start that earlier, say 2027. So we'd just love to know what it is that you would like to do there. We don't have to talk about today, but that is something that is, again, completely on the table for you to give us staff that direction, and we go away and plan within that context. As we've said, there's new regulatory oversight. At the moment, that's primarily for waters, and the Commerce Commission is the regulator there. We're actually due to hear from them on the 26th of February in terms of what that new reporting looks like. There will be new regulation coming through. We've been signalled through the Systems Improvement Bill. They're looking at regulating what our groups of activities are. So again, that will be something that might change through this LTP shortly about what our groups of activities are. And then again, for development contributions and rate capping, potential regulation coming in there as well. So again, we're going to be building this regulation framework and how we work within that while delivering everything. We've touched on the busy reform process. It's everything from reorganising the regional council through to the RMA, civil defence as well. There is a lot going on, and staff, as we said, Joe is managing a project to make sure that we stay on track and do what we need to do. And then I think finally, it's a really important part is managing our community's expectations. A rate cap environment does make that really difficult. I've heard many times, we don't want to keep increasing rates, but at the same time, the community wants to be a thriving place. So how do we balance those? What trade-offs do we make to keep what we have great and do it at a good price. So as we move through our next workshops, sorry, it's gone from up there. Our next workshops, we've got growth projections. Philip from our team will be coming to talk to you on Thursday, and Tanya, about where and what that's looking like. We will be looking at the current council vision and community outcomes, and whether you want to review that or not. We'll be setting infrastructure objectives. We'll be looking through the financial strategy. So that's going to be a journey in itself, working through the financial strategy and understanding the financial mechanisms that you can use to build this long-term plan. We will be coming to you about our assumptions. So this LTP is built on assumptions, and how we go about that, and making sure that we're getting all the right ones in there. So that's going to be a big part of that puzzle. And then also, again, as Aidan touched on, working through levels of service, the key issues, priorities. That's all going to be happening from the end of February through March, setting up hopefully for some early engagement in April or May with the community. So that's it. Happy to take any questions. Understand that there is a lot to digest there. I'm more than happy to sit down with any of you individually, phone conversations, whatever it takes to help you understand what we're going to be embarking on for the next 17 months.
Thank you for that. Very informative. Are there any questions from the table?
Through the chair, more of a comment. Kendall, Aidan, thank you for that introduction. I suspect that is very much the thin edge of the wedge. It will be a very large wedge going forward for the next little while. In response to your question or comment around, do we just wait till 2029 or do we start looking at a rates cap? Can't answer that now, but I think we would be unwise not to put everything on the table and run it through a lens of what the rates cap is going to look like. If nothing else, it will help acclimatise the community to what the future is going to be. And the whole thing around community expectations, it's the same as when we go out, I suspect, with our average rates increase. Very few people actually get that rates increase. Some get more, some get less, because it's an average. And so very few people are actually on the average. And when we go out with the government's 2 to 4%, there is going to be pretty much everybody in the country will be disappointed, because waters is excluded and a number of other things are excluded as well. So the 2 to 4 may apply to what is left, but the rest of it's going to keep adding to the account. So that's, a fairly big communication strategy that everybody is going to face. So thank you for that. I look forward to the very difficult conversations we have to have over the next some time.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad you're looking forward to it, because it's going to be a challenge. Duncan.
Yes, look, from my own behalf, yes, please transition starting from now to the towards the 4%, nice and smoothly. That's my request, my personal request. But look, I recognise, look, these rate cap things, and yes, I don't think water should have been excluded, and I don't even put too much faith in these rate caps sticking around either, because governments come and go, and it is what it is. I would rather put more faith in it becoming a common community election expectation that these rates are capped. Otherwise, they won't vote people in. So that's my request anyway.
I appreciate the commentary today. I think we were going to have that comment or have that discussion in the context of the financial strategy. I'm personally looking forward to that conversation around what our financial situation is looking ahead, and what the trade-offs might be at a high level. But appreciate some feedback. I just think we just wanted to reinforce that we are going to have time to dive into that a little bit more in the context of the financial strategy.
So thank you for your time and effort. Undoubtedly, we're going to see a lot more of you in the next few months. So thank you.